We'll go to Coney Island.
Is there a Zoltar machine there?
Yeah, what kind of wish would you make? Small?
Yeah, I want to be smaller.
My friend Dave likes our show. It means something to me.
I know, that's cool.
He still hasn't admitted it.
Like, I wouldn't listen. But now that I know you, it's not bad.
No, he's a big fan of the constraints put on the show. Mm-hmm. He says he likes art with constraints. That was the big thing. I was like, I don't want it to be another show where we just talk about
we're just the best.
A million different things.
We're just so awesome.
We start on one topic, and then it goes to the second topic before the first topic is finished, and then the third.
Greg, what do you got?
We should do a one-off episode called 1,000 Topics. Just do something like that.
Hats, soft shell or mesh back.
What do you think of hats? Well, I think hats can block out the sun. Yeah, speaking of the sun.
The sun, isn't it crazy that it can still burn your skin even though it's so far away?
Yeah, speaking of burning, I had some fish last night in the oven.
Oh man, fish can really stink up an apartment.
My feet stink after long days.
Speaking of long days, isn't it weird how sometimes time is really short and sometimes it's really long?
Yeah, you know why time sometimes seems longer and shorter? It's
why, Greg?
All about your perspective and perception of time. What about those people who spell perspective prescription? Prescription costs are outrageous these days.
Have you seen that commercial for Good RX? I used that and it was the same price as my regular prescription.
I had a Subaru WRX at one point. How many topics do you think we just hit? 10?
I have a subscription to Real Simple magazine. I would hate
1,000 topics. Not going deep at all.
Welcome to One Topic, where we stick to one topic. My name is Autumn Fisher.
And my name is Greg Russ.
And we've been talking for about 40 minutes before we started recording.
Because we get all the other topics out of the way before, so we can focus on the one topic, which I did notice you said for the first time where we stick to one topic instead of saying where we try to stick to one topic. So
I heard myself say that, and I was glad that I said it because I think that that's right. I think that that's the better way to introduce ourselves.
You were hedging your bets before, and now I think some confidence has been built, and you feel comfortable enough saying, we're going to stick to the one topic.
Yeah, we're going to do it.
Because we had the strange, this is now getting us off topic, but we had that strange, remember that one time and early on we tried to experiment with some kind of point system and penalties if we got off topic, and, I'm glad we didn't do that.
Yeah.
A little too cheesy.
No one was going to keep score.
Morning zooey.
Yeah, or ring a bell.
Yeah, ding, 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 ding. Autumn.
And then we eat chicken wings while we talk about it and see if we can keep going in the spicy chicken wings.
That's your punishment. You get off topic, you got to eat level 1 spicy chicken wing. You get off topic again, level 2, all the way to level 10. That burns your mouth to the point where you can't speak anymore.
Yeah, you can't even do a topic because you're dead.
So what's today's topic?
Today's topic is hobbies. Hobbies! What is a hobby? Why do we have them?
Yeah, please fill me in.
I don't know.
What is a hobby?
I think of a hobby as something that is not work. You still might get money for it. Maybe because you don't think so?
An activity done regularly in one's leisure time for pleasure.
But you could still have money from those pleasure activities,
I think
right?
when you start making some money, you cross the line and it's no longer a hobby and it becomes a skill that you can monetize.
Okay. A skill.
That's monetized.
All right, sure.
If you were knitting, for example, knitting on your own, making sweaters for the neighborhood, scarves for the children, socks for the old people.
Mittens for the babies.
Yeah, jinx, we both almost said mittens at the same time.
Mittens.
You're doing that.
Kittens.
That's a hobby. But then the moment someone gives you money, that's a service.
Okay. All right. So a hobby is something you can't get paid for, something you enjoy in your leisure time. Okay. So
now that we've squared that away, thank you for joining us on this week's episode of One Topic, where we talk about one topic and give you the definition.
Just define a topic, and then we're done.
One definition. The show's changing. Tune in next week where we pull up...
We'll have thousands of episodes. We'll just go through the entire dictionary.
Micro podcasts.
That's hilarious. That's a great idea where we just read the dictionary word by word, every single thing that's listed in the dictionary under each word, and then that's it.
That's the complete show.
That's the complete show. We'll start with aardvark or whatever the first. That can't be it. Something that starts with an A.
Some people do read the dictionary as a hobby.
Ooh.
And I didn't...
Those people are probably dead because they're old as fuck.
I didn't mean for that to be like a heavy-handed return to the topic, but that is something. I've known people to do it. I read the dictionary. It's like, how much of that do you retain? Sure, you come across so many words, but there's a lot there. You holding on to those?
I think it depends on the person, right? If you're the kind of person who can read something like that and retain it, I am not. It flies in and goes out my ears.
Well, these days,
one ear, not the other.
These days we retain less anyway because it's just so accessible. Everything is there, so that's a real thing. Before, knowledge was something you could throw out there and impress people. Like, where did you get that from? Well, I looked it up and I remembered it. Now,
anytime you're sitting around a party and you're trying to remember, like, who was the guy in that movie? He was, and people say, "I'll just look it up." Like, yeah, but then you won't remember it next time. You have to come upon the knowledge in your own brain. You have to access it yourself in your brain, and then it will stick the next time. But if you just look it up, it's superficial knowledge.
Yeah, defeats the purpose.
Yes.
Though I guess if you're going to sit down and actually read the dictionary, at that point, you're probably trying to remember and retain words and definitions so you can throw them out there and make people feel like assholes. I don't know if it's really... ultimately, what else would that be for? It's like, yes, you want to expand your vocabulary. I get it. That's a valid thing. But mostly it's like, I want to use bigger words than you. And then make you feel like an idiot when you use a word incorrectly.
Right.
Yeah. Uh-oh. That's your hobby. Good.
Being an asshole.
Yeah. You should also pick up a new hobby called drinking poison. I'm a mixologist. My hobby is I mix different poisons, and I want to see which one will kill me the fastest because I'm a jerk.
Is that an apothecary? Mixing poisons for like Romeo and Juliet?
Sure.
Okay.
So this topic for this week, where did this come from? I know we were talking about topics, and there's a list of them we have going. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering why you settled on this, and I'm guessing it's just because you bake breads nonstop. Yes,
I am. My hobby right now is baking bread. For a long time, I have been interested in baking. One of my adult hobbies, I would say, is baking. I love making cakes and cookies and cupcakes, and all from scratch. I'm really into from scratch things, brownies, everything. And I didn't realize that baking was a skill because it just felt like you were following directions. And so I didn't feel like it was anything special. But then I would bring, my things to places and people would be, excited and surprised and talk about things being really good. And so I was like, oh, and then watching other people bake and then, them messing it up and being like, how could you mess that up? So it turns out it was a skill that I have. So it's like I have a green thumb, but I have like a baker's thumb.
It is quite the skill. This is the appeal to baking that I've always had, or the appeal that, whatever. I didn't have the appeal, but it had the appeal for me. Mm-hmm. Was the fact that it's so based in chemistry and science and precise measurements and precise, with ingredients and temperatures. And it does blow my mind. You getting into it, how long have you been into it? Because obviously baking has become quite the trend.
Yeah.
Great British Baking Show, which I do love. I will sit there and I will watch that thing.
It's so soothing.
And it's amazing because there's no money at the end. There's no shitty behavior. These are just amateur bakers who do this thing because they love it and they're trying to get good at it. And they go in there and they're supportive of one another.
Supportive.
Like, what a concept. You finish yours first and you maybe go help someone else out instead of, I think of, there's an American version now which is mimicking the British version. But if this was an American creation, I'm sure it would have been like, I sabotaged their ganache. I got in there when they weren't looking and I spit in it.
Well, the judges would be asking them, like, who do you think needs to go home next?
Yeah, and just
And if they don't answer, then they would be on the chopping block, that kind of thing. I mean, that kind of thing is fun to hear. Like, that makes a good reality show. But it turns out you can also just have a supportive group of people who are trying their best, and you love them, and they love each other, and we're all happy for each other,
Which there's been some criticism, a backlash against that in the UK. Twee culture, they're calling it.
Twee?
Yeah, it's too, it's too nice. I don't know. There's this idea that it's a weakening of humanity if we actually become supportive, which that's a whole different topic for a different time, which I say quite often on the show. So I'll add it to the
Write it down.
to the list. But I cannot stand that exists. That people actually helping one another and doing something because they like it and not needing to put other people down in the process is viewed as a negative thing.
All right, well, write that down because I have more to say about it, but I'm not going to because we are sticking to one topic today.
Yeah, so my initial point was shows like this, baking shows have always been popular, but I feel like there's been an explosion in baking. So when did you first get into baking and why?
I think it was, I don't know, early 2000s probably. Probably when I had like a place to actually bake, and not just I'm a kid in an apartment type of thing. And I don't remember exactly when, but it was just, I wanted to try and do it, and instead of getting a box of cake, like, what do you have to do to make a real cake? Stuff like that. So I started doing that. And then bread seemed like the next level to try. And I tried to make bread and it was horrible. I had so many horrible breads.
What kind were you trying to start out with?
Just like honey wheat, white breads, like anything simple, pretty simple, straightforward bread. But the problem was that I was looking at all these sort of cheap ways to make it, where cheap as in like tricks, like sneaky ways, not putting in the time that sometimes bread needs.
Cutting corners.
Yeah. And
lazy.
Measuring things by cups and teaspoons versus grams and ounces. Not being too concerned with the temperature of water, or there's a lot of recipes that you find online that tell you to use like 110 degrees Fahrenheit water, and that's to like speed up the yeast, because the yeast will like the hot water, but it can't be too hot or they'll die. But like if it's right in this temperature, it'll make the yeast happen real quick, and then you can cut your proving time in half. But you get like a sort of inferior bread, and then there's a lot of things that can go wrong because you're not measuring things properly, and there's not enough food for the yeast, and then there's too much, and then it deflates, and it's all kinds of craziness. So I really didn't do well for a really, really, really long time. And then I got a book called like Baking Bread for Beginners. It's on Amazon. You can follow them on Instagram. They're Alchemy Bread, and she's amazing. And she, tells you straight up, like, you've got to weigh it. You need these things. You need to use your brain. You need to use calculations for the temperature of the air and the temperature of the water. And when that was the case, I was kind of annoyed by that. I didn't want to take the temperature of the air or the temperature of my flour or all that bullshit, because I was like, people have been making bread for thousands of years without taking the temperature of their fucking flour. I don't need to do that. And you know what? I wasn't successful. So I started following the recipes as she wrote them and doing the math and everything. And then I was starting to get some successful breads. And now I'm on to sourdoughs, which are amazing. And it feels so good. It feels so good because, I'll finish this up. It feels so good because you put so much time into these doughs. You start out mixing just a little bit of your sourdough at 7 p.m. the night before, 7 a.m. the next 12 hours later. You do a little something with it. It sits for 3 hours. You get it back. You do something with it. It sits for 2 hours. You get something. It rests for 30 minutes. It proves whatever. You put it in the oven. By the time you're done, it's like 4 p.m. So you've been thinking about this dough for so long. And then when it turns out amazing and beautiful and your house smells so good, it is the best feeling.
You have something to show for it. That's why.
Yes.
You've put in a lot of work. You've dedicated time. I mean, the fact that at first it was difficult and you didn't quit. I think that's a big thing. People start things and you were looking to cut corners and do it.
I just didn't know any better really at first.
Yeah, but
you
continued, so you're getting better at it and you're seeing better results. And so I think that's one of the big things in anything in life, but when you have tangible results after you do something, it is very satisfying. And I think a big thing with hobbies, it's been shown that they're good. They can jumpstart your brain for like the other things. So you do the radio show with Eric, you do this podcast, you do other creative endeavors. And I think something like baking, because, you learn from doing. So that's a big thing. Anything that gets your brain moving in a creative type of way. And sure, if there's I would say baking is creative. You're literally creating something. And even if you're following a recipe, but these things, and there's a distinct purpose to it at that point. Like, I'm making bread. That's not murky at all. You know exactly what you're doing. And I think all that stuff is healthy. Using your brain in that way then probably carries over. And then for the other things you do in your life, I would assume we could do some tests if you wanted. We could have a week where you didn't bake, and I could listen to the shows that you're on and see how your performance is. And they probably be worse. And then we have a week where you do bake, and I bet the performances will be better. That's my point. I do think that this kind of thing, stimulation of any sort, is going to help you in other areas of your life.
Sure. I think it not just that, but also, like you said, keep going, even when you're not successful. Like failure through STEM, right? Isn't that a thing? Failure through science, whatever. What is that? Do you know what I'm talking about?
You're on your own on this one.
Okay, there's like a
Drown. Drown. I'm not throwing you any kind of life preserver.
There's this sort of science movement from scientists talking about, like, these experts will tweet something and say, like, I fucked up so many times, but when this finally happened, it was a result of all these times I messed up. And so, or like weird things like how Viagra was discovered, it was kind of a mistake, things like that. So making errors and not doing well at something really is you learning what that thing is. So like you're not gonna be great at something at first, and if you are, it might just be luck.
Sure. And I think that hobbies are a good arena to do this in because the stakes aren't as high. If it's professionally and you're getting out there, of course you're going to make mistakes all over the place, but people make mistakes. They don't like rejection. They don't like failure. And, you encounter that. And if it's a professional setting, you may just quit or you may be fired. It could, it could be something where it's like, you're not good enough. But you need
putting too much pressure on yourself to relax and actually.
Well, that's a big part of it. If you're not capable of handling the setbacks and the difficulties and the hardships, you may not move forward. And so, with a hobby being, an arena where you can afford more mistakes, I'm sure plenty of people still quit even in hobbies because it proves to be difficult. But there are things to learn from that. It's like, all right, this was difficult, and I got through it. And now I can apply that. I know that's not the end of the world if I fail, and you can apply it to different, again, realms of your life. Hobby's very important, it seems like.
Do you have a hobby?
Well, that's the thing. No. That's the thing for this show on hobbies. Do I have a hobby? At this point, well, I guess you could say that lines are somewhat blurred. I do creative things that I shied away from for a very long time, that I'm not making money for now. Again, writing. This podcast, you could say, I don't view it quite as a hobby. I hope it's more of a professional venture to me.
Sure, I agree.
Even if we're not making money, my career is in radio and this kind of thing. So that's when I say no, it's like, I don't know. Does this count as a hobby? Does it not count as a hobby?
Maybe on paper it might. If you had to select a category for it, it might be under hobby, but
yeah, so it could.
Yeah.
But no, writing is another thing that I've shied away from, and I've never actually done it professionally where I've gotten paid a few times for a few things I've written. But that's something too. that I didn't do for quite a while because of the difficulties involved, mostly me thinking I had nothing to say. And well, it's true. It's like,
Right. Not believing that what you had to say was interesting or important.
So you sit down, though, I always found out if I sat down and actually did it, I was able to accomplish something would actually come out. But at that point, I'm doing that more often than I used to. I'm trying to write some short stories and things like this. So I guess you could say that's a hobby at this point. In my mind, it still is like maybe this is something I can relay into another creative professional endeavor. But I used to paint. Remember when I was painting a bit?
Oh, yeah.
That was weird.
Where do you have anything that you painted still?
I've got a few things right here. The fact that this is an audio medium, I guess, is no good. I'll show you. The funny thing was I knew nothing about painting. I just bought these flat canvases and acrylics, and I bought 2 paintbrushes. So there was no variations in the width, or some come to a point, and I still don't know much about painting. But I was like, I'm just going to paint some things. Why not? And then I just slopped crap onto a canvas.
I mean, how else are you? I mean, besides taking a class, what else are you gonna do?
I've showed this one before, I think. You've seen this one. This was my feelings on radio. And we can take pictures of this, and we can put this up. Where would you put it, on the Facebook page?
I would put it on the Facebook page.
Which is what, just one topic podcast?
Yeah. One topic, I think. Just one topic.
Yeah. I mean, it's very childish. Look at the
buildings and stuff, and the hill behind looks great.
There's some shading going on. It's a picture of a painting of a city on fire in the background. It's just burning. And in the foreground, there's a radio tower transmitter transmitting its signal. And the commentary on it was, I was disenchanted with radio at that point because, everything was being voice tracked, which is just pre-recorded. Live local content was being phased out, everything that they could do to save money. So in my mind, there was an emergency in the city. The whole city was burning to the ground, and the radio station kept going on, kept playing the stupid music.
Baby, I'm taking it for notion.
Yeah, that was Nirvana. Hot new band Nirvana. Be on the lookout for them. They're going to go places. I have feelings. Yeah. Meanwhile, flesh is being crisped, and people are screaming, and there's horror going on.
Interesting.
So that was my commentary with this one. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's fine for a child. If a child painted that, you'd say, that's pretty amazing.
Right.
And that was from 2008, so that was 11 years ago. This was one. This was one. My friend had a hole in the wall in her apartment. I don't know how the hole got there. And this is just a weird painting with some abstract design on it and a footnote next to the abstract design that at the bottom says, "This painting serves no other purpose than to cover a hole in the wall." And I like the idea of someone looking behind it and actually seeing a hole.
I love that one.
But then I didn't give it to her because I painted it and I wanted to keep it.
Well, now you need to punch a hole in your wall and then put that there.
I wanted to keep it. But I don't. The shading on this back one's all right, huh?
It looks great. Yeah, that one's way cool. I really like that one.
All right, maybe you can have that one.
I want it.
You really want that?
I do. I'm making this. All right, this is off topic. I'm making this spare bedroom. I'm making this into like a city room where I'm putting everything that we've gotten. Like we have a bunch of Catlanas, and I got those illustrations with you from New York. And then if I had that one, that would be so cool.
You have to put a hole in the wall.
Shit.
Else I wouldn't give it to you.
We'd have to I'll like print something that has looks like a hole.
This was just I actually had astronomy notes from college, and I just created a canvas that looks like a sheet of notebook paper and copied my notes onto it.
That one's awesome. I love that. I forgot that you'd made that.
Yeah, it's got stellar properties, luminosity.
You've had that forever.
Luminosity classes, spectral classes. It's got the symbols for every planet, and it's so old. Pluto still has. Oh no, I guess I put a little asterisk next to it. What is that? How do you pronounce that word?
Asterisk.
Yeah. See, I never know. It's one of those that I can't remember. because I knew I pronounced it incorrectly, and it's become such a confusing mess in my brain.
Right, like halfway through the word, you're like, where is that S?
Yeah, I hated the fact that I saw it there. I was like, oh no, now I have to try to say that word that I'm going to mispronounce.
Asterisk.
I don't know anymore. And then, what is this painting? This was a koi painting, not of a fish.
I like your face.
And
Like
has a parentheses, and then instead of OV, it has IK. It's a person who couldn't bring themselves to say love.
Oh.
So it's like, I like it, even though they meant love.
Where were those right now? Were they? You didn't just take them off your wall.
Nah, they were sitting on top of my bookshelf. I mean,
Okay.
the two of them are propped up.
Okay.
So I did some painting at some point, and I enjoyed that. I don't know why I quit. It was just one of those things. I had this idea that I was going to create paintings of maybe just a series of numbers and letters that had absolutely no meaning on small canvases and leave them at random subway stations around New York. And then maybe people would maybe attach an email address to it, and then people would try to figure it out.
That's like Free Art Friday. Do you know about Free Art Friday in Atlanta?
That's why I'm not going to do it now, because all the stuff is being done by other people.
But that's cool.
No.
It doesn't mean that it doesn't lessen it. It makes it, you could be a part of that. And
It lessens it
on
on
New
them,
York.
because then suddenly you're just the person who's doing that thing that everyone else is doing, and those other people are doing that thing because they want attention.
But that doesn't matter if they're doing it because they want attention. You're doing it because it's cool.
Yeah, but you get lumped in with them. And then you're just one of those people. Oh, yeah, you're doing that because you want to be noticed.
Yeah.
And so I can't have that, so I just shy away from it. But the idea was there was no meaning behind this at all. People like to attach meanings to things, and I would just like to see what crazy crap
I love that.
people came up with. Like, what do all these things mean?
Yeah.
And the answer is nothing. It means absolutely
Well, I guess you could
nothing.
just do it without anything, right? You could just put them out there and put a hashtag on the back. Don't make it Free Art Friday, but just let it be out there, and then you have your own hashtag for it, and then people find it. And maybe they post a picture.
You could do that. And then when I say there's no meaning, but isn't that the thing with art? The meaning is subjective.
That's right. If I find meaning in it, maybe you meant to have this meeting. We'll have a meeting about your meaning. What about when you were a kid? Did you have any hobbies when you were little?
No.
Soccer?
I played soccer. Was that a hobby?
Is that a hobby? I don't know. I wrote down, I took horseback riding lessons when I was a kid, and it was like Western. It wasn't, like the fancy kind where you're like wearing fancy clothes and you're jumping over things. It wasn't that. It was like barrel racing and
the get dirty riding horse.
Yeah. It was fun. I loved that. And then I wanted to join 4-H. I didn't even know what that meant. I just knew it was like more horse stuff. But then I went to the 4-H meeting and I thought it was so boring because it was like actual like knowledge instead of doing things. It was just so boring. So I pretended like I had asthma, and I would go to the office, and they said that I could feed sugar cubes to the horses, and I would feed some to the horses, but then I would eat some too.
You would eat the horse's sugar cubes.
Yeah.
Sugar cubes, by the way, very disappointing. You would think they're better than they actually are. It's still sugar. I don't know what the difference is, but if you had
How do they cube it?
what holds it together?
Yeah, is it like egg whites or something? Like this tiny little drop of egg white?
that holds the sugar. There's someone out there screaming now.
Yeah.
The answer.
They're like, it's gelatin.
So
I
you liked
remember-
horses, though. I never knew that you were a horse fan, a horse lady.
Yeah, I
Autumn
got some
dreams of
blue
horses.
ribbons.
Blue ribbons.
I did.
For what kind of events?
In like those racing ones where you get your horse real fast and you go around a barrel, or you do like a figure 8 and you have to do all these things.
And you were on a
I did a
full-size
little bit of-
horse.
Yeah. I did a
How
little
old?
bit of jumping. I was in maybe like 4th or 5th grade.
That's a small person to be on a full-size horse going as
It was
fast as
awesome.
possible.
My parents got me like shirts with fringe.
Where did this happen? What stable was near you?
And I was in Loganville. And so back then, Loganville was much more rural. So they were just, I don't know, I don't even know. My mom took me down a road.
This blows my mind. I didn't know.
Yeah. So I've gotten on a horse as an adult and felt like I got this. And like Travis and I have done one of those like couples things where, it's like through Living Social where it's like horse trail, and I felt like, I got this. I'm on the horse. I can fucking do this. But I don't know the horse. The horse doesn't know me. And he's like pissed at me for being on him. And so he didn't listen. He was like going off the trail a little bit and mad at me because I was trying to control him instead of him controlling me.
So what happened? What ultimately happened with your love of horses?
I think that they stopped providing lessons. I think the people who were teaching at that like horse place maybe went to college or something. They probably were like 17 years old. You know, I felt like they were these grown-up dudes and this grown-up lady, but I think that they were probably kids. Now that I think about it. But yeah, I think either my parents couldn't afford it anymore, I don't know, or it was they moved away or they went to college or something. And I stopped doing it.
Did you miss it at that point?
Yeah.
Were you still invested?
Yeah, I wanted to still do it. I remember. But now I kind of feel like that connection is there. Like, I can get on a horse and I can do what I need to do. Like one time, my previous boyfriend's uncle is a horse trainer. And we went out to his house and we got on a couple horses. And the uncle was making fun of my boyfriend, saying like he looked like a sack of potatoes because he just didn't like know how to sit on the horse. And I wasn't even, it was one of those like, I'm not bragging. I was just on the horse and I guess I just knew how to be on it. And he was like, there you go, Autumn knows, you know? So, and I think it just came from my little bit of time on a horse.
That can make you feel good. You can brag about that. All those amateurs getting on the horse. People like me, I wouldn't even know what to do on the thing.
That's what I mean. It turns out it's like a thing.
It is a thing.
I didn't know.
Riding a horse is a difficult thing. It's an animal that you have to control, but it's also, got its autonomy.
Yeah, you have a relationship. That's why people who are like, they don't want to get on a horse they don't know. Because the horse can be annoyed with you because they can't communicate with you and you don't know how to communicate with them.
Yeah, there's no rapport. That's why with Red Dead Redemption 2,
that's right.
I had to bond with my horse. And you can get several horses, and I stuck with the one horse. I was like, no, this is my horse. We're in it together.
I saw someone playing Red Dead Redemption, and they were like beating up a guy in the woods and stealing his money, and I thought, oh, Greg's guy would never do that.
No. No, that's not a way to live. So,
video games, is that a hobby?
I was thinking about that because that was our topic last week. No, It's not really a hobby. I just play them here and there, and I haven't been invested that much outside of Red Dead Redemption 2.
Okay.
Photography at some point. This was before cameras were everywhere. Again, I have this bad habit.
You're not like a basic bitch girl who's like, I'm a photographer.
I have this bad habit of once things become popular and mainstream, I ditch them. It's like, I don't want people to think that I'm doing this because it's the thing. I'm getting back into it a bit because now I have my grandfather's film camera. The settings, like I know aperture and shutter speed and ISO, but with digital cameras, you just look, it's no good, you delete it. There's real trial and error with this thing. I'm coming out of getting the film developed, and half of them are underexposed.
Oh, really?
Well, when you were here in New York, I took some of those photos, and maybe it was borderline creepy because you were sitting on the couch, and I was like, Autumn, pose. I didn't actually tell you to pose. I was just taking pictures of you. But
like, how about when
she knew? She knew. Well, these weren't secret photos, but none of them came out. They were all too dark.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah, well, we'll try it again.
I'm actually kind of glad because I feel like I would have looked bad or something.
Nah, you looked great.
Yeah.
I mean that. I wouldn't just throw that out there. I don't give empty compliments. I can't do that. I can't. There's a block in my brain. I can't just tell someone a compliment if I don't mean it. So
you look good.
It was very nice. Kind of looking Autumn, but so with that
you're
camera
getting into photography, that's a thing.
Yeah, but then there's the other side of it. I look like the asshole who's got the film camera and I'm overthinking all of this crap. This is tying into our judging show.
Yeah.
As you see, these themes of our shows, they're interwoven. They run in and out of all of our lives in many different ways, but I can't stand that. I hate the fact that people hijack things that I enjoy and do it more for the image than for the actual art of it or the creative aspect of it or the fulfillment of it. And it's no reason not to do it. And I'm finally starting. I will say that I take the camera out. I went to Central Park and I still find myself kind of quickly grabbing pictures because I don't want to see
Right.
people. Or I don't want people to see me,
Yeah.
which is stupid.
Yeah, because you saying that they hijack it, those two can exist in separate things. You can be doing it because you enjoy it and you are doing it for your own reasons, and they can be doing it for what you deem superficial reasons. And those two can exist at the same time, and one can have meaning and one doesn't necessarily have to.
Exactly. They're exactly right.
But you can't.
Tell that to the irrational part of my brain.
Yeah, you can't talk to the irrational.
Shut up, Autumn. Shut up. Who is
Like,
she?
that might be true, but I don't care.
Who is this wench? Shut her up. I don't want to listen to her. But no, the big thing with photos, obviously, people are in it to show off now with phones just where they are and what they're doing and look how cool this is, or look at this picture of me. My big thing, I tried to get no people in the picture. I didn't like people in my pictures, though I liked it in urban settings. So it creates this loneliness in a city. So it's like, well, I know that's a city and there are no people there. One of my favorite pictures is Coney Island. Before they started to redevelop a lot of it, there was this building that was fenced off, chain link fence, weeds, part of the sign falling off, but it said Playland on it. And I loved it. And it just felt so isolating and remote. And I actually have that one on my wall. Maybe that's somewhat cocky. I hang my own photos up on the wall. But that was a big thing. I like to go around and try to get pictures that don't have people in them.
I love that idea.
And
That's a cool idea.
I'm getting back into it. So that's
Good.
a hobby.
All right.
That's something I'm going out and doing, despite the neuroses attached to it.
But when you were a kid, you didn't have any real hobbies when you were a kid. Like you and your friends would go do something, or
it's hard for me to establish a hobby because I feel like it's something that's somewhat focused. I like doing this specific thing and I go do it. I think as a kid we used to play baseball and street hockey and crap in the neighborhood and ride bikes, but that's just playing. You know what? I liked building models. I had little model airplanes and little model rockets.
okay.
I forgot about that. I built this SR-71 and the paint.
that?
It's a plane.
Oh.
It was the fastest plane in the world.
Oh.
It flew like Mach 4 or something, 4 times the speed of sound and very high in the atmosphere. It was a spy plane. It was before satellites were prominent. So anyway, it's a cool plane. I liked it. And I built this model. And it was all going well until I had to paint it.
Oh, you have to paint models?
Yeah, if you're really doing it, you gotta. This thing it needed to be black with a red stripe, and my stripe wasn't that straight. I mean, people who build models, they get so good at it. Like the amount of detail that can go into models. You ever look at model train sets that are done very well?
Yeah, sure.
They're insane.
Oh, that's like a real old man hobby. If you want to talk about like young versus old.
Train sets?
Why do old men want to build like a mountain and then the train and then a little town? What is that? Why is that an old man thing?
I think just because if you're going to get good at it, the amount of time and the detail that goes into it really requires your attention.
Like, this town needs a post office.
Yeah, and some patience. It's no different than people creating the fantasy worlds they live in now through pictures on Instagram, or they're curating a world. It just so happens you're the star of that world and you can just present snapshots of it. Yeah, and I think people like creating this little world. You are the god. They could smash it if they wanted. They could come in and like, oh, the floods come in, little world, and then just dump a bunch of water on it. But there's so much work.
Maybe that's why God doesn't, if God exists, maybe that's why God doesn't kill us all. 'Cause he's like, oh man, I put so much work, these idiots.
Yeah, where's his or her or its model? I prefer it just because I feel like if there's a God, it's something that we don't know.
Do you know that play? Oh shit, I forget what it's called. But there's a play where Earth and then a bunch of other worlds are just school projects, like a college thesis, and different people present their worlds, and then they have to get representatives from those worlds, and they were gonna beam up from Earth these very elite humans, but they were gone on vacation, and then the people house sitting for them were real, like, like a plumber, and then I think the lady was a 411 operator. So you can tell when this was.
Did you see this play?
Yeah, my parents were in it.
Where was this?
It's called The Whole Shebang. That's what it's called.
No, it sounds interesting.
Yeah. So it was a church play. It wasn't a church play, but it was
at a church.
We were part of a playhouse at our church. So plays. I was in a lot of plays when I was a kid. Anyway, so this one, so the Earth, so then, he's real embarrassed that these are the humans, and other worlds have a better language with less letters in the alphabet, and it's more sophisticated, where ours has, this many, and he only gets a C+ on Earth, and he's really upset about it.
No, that sounds like a very interesting thing. Yeah. I would look into it. I like the concept behind it.
I think Balky's in it. No, who's the brother who's American? Or the cousin
from Perfect Strangers, Larry?
Yeah. Yes, he is in the movie version, or the play version that you can find. I don't know. But so yeah, I would say plays. I was in some plays. I was in the Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, and Godspell, and Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat.
How old were you for that?
In Joseph, I was in elementary school, I think.
That's quite the undertaking for children that age.
But everybody else were adults or high schoolers.
Oh, okay, got it. You just
I was just in the chorus.
I was thinking it was a school play where all the kids were in it.
Oh,
that's a difficult one to pull off.
But I was Susan in Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe. Is that the older sister? Something like that. I did a okay job, I think. Not that great, but
we're sounding like one of those podcasts I make fun of, Autumn. Here's this thing that I can't tell you about. I don't remember. I mean, but
I was in plays, and I think
part
that
of it.
I didn't want. I was the kind of kid who would have been, I think, a theater kid, but I kind of felt like you, where it's like the people who are theater kids are very like out there and showy, and it's only for the sake of being showy. And I wanted to be showy because it was funny, or do something because of something outside of me, and not just to showcase me. And I felt like those theater kids were just all about doing it because it reflects onto them.
The product is more important at that point.
Right.
It's like, we're doing this for an audience. Without the audience, there's no point in doing this at all. But that thing gets switched around because there is an audience, then it's about me.
Right.
They're here for me. And if you're a good actor, at some point, maybe people do come out because you're in it, but the content better still be good.
But just the way that they acted, like, how I just felt like all the theater kids would always hang out in this hallway, and just the way that they acted over there, and like drama that was going on between all of them, it was just so.
It's just everyone looking for acceptance, ultimately, is what it comes down to. And there's a strange thing with welding at some point. So there was a place you would pay, and they had workshops in different classes here in New York. Woodworking, furniture building, stuff like that. Welding, for some reason, became one of the most popular things. And people were doing it. I don't know if because they actually wanted to weld, there was a social element to this. And that's fine. If you want to go do this and you want to socialize, I'm not going to get down on that. But it becomes more of a show at that point than actually learning to weld. And these people will come out with these really shitty sculptures with awful weld points. And I was like, okay, great. You did that. And if you really cared about doing that and you kept practicing, I'd be supportive. But it shouldn't affect me so much. I shouldn't care so much. If these people want to... I do buy into that, Autumn. I do buy into like live and let live. When I have a problem with it is when it's something, this one doesn't bother me as much because I never wanted to weld, but I have a problem when it's something I also want to do, and then I think it reflects something about me that's not true to the world.
Right, because you're looking at those people and you don't like them, but then you doing that thing means you are them.
But there's so many things I'm interested in, would like to do, that it's kept me away from doing that. So that is stupid. There was a point I told you I built the model planes, but those model rockets, the ones that you could actually launch.
Right.
You would go to Michael's and you would build them, and then there were different size rocket engines, and there was a launch pad, and they would just fly up, and if you did it correctly, a parachute would come out, and they would come back down. And I remember I built one I was really proud of, and this guy just made some offhand comment about it being ugly, and then it ruined it for me.
Oh no!
I just kind of gave
was
up.
An adult?
No, it was some other kid.
Okay.
Who also was doing a rocket, and his wasn't good, and ultimately he was probably just jealous of my rocket.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things. It's like, why did that affect me so much? You look back and there's regret. It's like, that was stupid. I can't believe I shied away from doing this. I
think about that movie Defending Your Life a lot. Do you know that movie?
Fill me in.
Defending Your Life is where a guy dies, and before you either get to come back to Earth as another thing, like as another human and try again, or I guess you go off to heaven, you're sort of put to a trial where they review episodes of your life where you were scared or you didn't make decisions or do things based on fear. And Rip Torn is in it, and he's amazing. And it's Meryl Streep and
Albert Brooks.
Yes, Albert Brooks. I was like, Super Dave's brother. That's his name. Yeah, it's this amazing movie, and a lot of things. And so I think about going through my life, what episode, like, I'm at a crossroads. I can do something and be fearless, or I cannot do something because I'm scared. And will that play in my defending your life? So I try and do the thing that I'm afraid of doing, but still do it.
I like that you got this lesson from that movie.
Yeah. Which
is nice, because it's a good thing. I think that it could be helpful following that if you're applying that to situations in your life. If you found that you're sticking to this.
Sometimes.
When are times that you haven't? When are the times that, if there's anything you've come across, you're trying and you're like, nah, I'm not going to do it.
It's more of the times when I remember and then I do it. Like, there was something I wasn't ready to think about this. It was something recently where I was like, I got to do it because I'm afraid. I'm nervous to do it. Like little things like going up and asking for something, I'm afraid to go up and ask. But the brave person who is afraid but still does it, they are going to get to go to heaven or wherever, to the next plane of existence, or I'm going to have to come back. And so I think, like, just go do it. And a lot of times it works out. Or, it's the same sort of philosophy as people saying, like, I say yes to things. I try and say yes. And it's the same kind of thing, just trying to be positive, I guess. And then also saying, like, I will do that thing, even if I don't want to, or I'm afraid of doing it. Like, you just try and do it.
It's interesting how difficult it can be. And in theory, it's very simple. You're scared of something. Who cares? Just try it.
Yeah. And
I feel like it's taken me until this past year to finally get... There have been points in my life where I'm making decisions that I'll do it. Moving to New York, for example, was a pretty big thing. And I just did that. I didn't think twice about it. And if I overthought it, I probably wouldn't have done it. But in general, you're facing something that is a bit scary. It is crazy how easy it is just to put it off and then not do it. And then be aware of it and say, why am I doing this? I should just say yes to it. And then you still don't do it. And I feel like, all this neuroses I'm throwing at you about doing things and other people and what is it, I'm finally starting to just put that crap aside, or doing things that I am scared of. I'll tell you, the writing is something I was actually more scared of, because it was something I felt like I was always good at in my life since I was a kid. And there's a fear that comes along with that. It's like, well, if I write and it turns out it's not good, then that means this one thing that I thought my whole life I was good at, I wasn't good at. And what does that mean? Where does that leave me?
Yeah.
Which is dumb. And now
that's scary. No, that makes sense. That's not dumb. I think that's scary. That's a scary thought, especially to have been told or to think this thing about yourself. And then because it is a creative thing and it is from your soul, right? It's coming from you. You put it out there. And then if it gets rejected, it's not just a rejection of your work. It's like a rejection of you.
And exactly. And what you find, or what I found out at least that I was doing at some point when I would try to write, it wasn't the kind of writing I wanted to do. There was There were protections built into it. That way, if it was rejected, it wasn't a rejection of me because it wasn't really, you know, my complete beliefs and feelings and thoughts put out there. Which, what's the point?
Yeah.
What's the point of writing? But now, finally, just moving past that, I'll tell you, in the time between being a kid with the rockets and the things that I enjoyed and I didn't really think about. Oh, I will tell you quickly. I had a go-kart that I wanted, and a hobby was taking care of the thing. I painted it. I bought new tires for it. I mowed a lot of lawns for this. Then this kid in the neighborhood, like I bought this thing, and working on the engine as much as you can work on a pull start engine that's like a lawnmower engine. There's only so much you can do. But I was like, I'm going to maximize the specs on this, and I'm really going to get this go-kart up and running. And this kid in the neighborhood, whose parents bought him everything, bought him a 2-seater go-kart. And it was faster than mine. And it was brand new, and mine was old. And that was one of the times, like, I don't care. I wasn't discouraged, and I kept working on it, and I felt good about it. And I felt like there was something that I got out of that because that was my go-kart. My parents didn't just give it to me. And the way he treated his go-kart, he didn't care. Leave it out in the rain. Wouldn't put the oil in. What are you doing?
Yeah.
So, anyway, there was this point as a kid, and like you're doing things, and then whenever this fear sets in, here's how I spent my time. This was my hobby, playing online dominoes. I looked it up before this, 18,642 games of online dominoes. With a 54% win rate, which is pretty good.
18,000 what?
18,642 games of dominoes.
Wow.
So you're playing online with other people.
Yeah.
And this is what I would do. And I loved looking at the stats. The stats were quantifying the amount of time I wasted. And for some reason, I thought that would motivate me to get me to do other things. Right. It's like, look at all this time. You can look right here on this screen. You can see how much time of your life you have wasted. But instead, I found comfort in it. There was some strange comfort that I got from looking at all this past time.
Was it that you didn't, that was time when you weren't putting yourself out there?
Yeah, I wasn't putting myself out there. I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't doing anything. Yeah. There's the element of
safe. You were just safe.
I enjoyed playing dominoes.
Sure.
I don't think there's an excuse to play 18.
I've never played dominoes ever in my life.
Oh, there's many different ways you can play. You can play no fives. You can play fives. Yeah, we'll teach you one day. But there was if you want to talk about fear, in this, online, people would trash talk in the chat, which I thought was stupid. But they would write things like, I hope you die. I hope your family dies because I beat them in a game of online dominoes. But they're the guys who actually play in the parks. I was pretty good at dominoes. I'll tell you, I was pretty good. I could have held my own. But getting out there and sitting across from those guys and having them throw their shit talk at me, I was, no way. There's no way. No.
You could just be the silent guy. You didn't have to respond.
Here comes white boy.
Yeah.
Here comes silent white boy.
Yep.
No, but that's something too that I think could have been fun, and there's more value in it than.
The other phrase I like to think of is fortune favors the bold. I really like that phrase. Mm-hmm. I think that's something that I like to think about. So if I were you, I would make myself go play not checkers. What'd you say? Dominoes with them. Yeah.
Well, it's been so long now. I finally moved away from that. I think I have healthier activities going on at this point.
But that's what I'm saying though. Like those moments are the ones that you have to. It's scaring me. I'm vulnerable. You have to do it. Is
there, as you become better at baking, is there a part of you that thought, man, if I could go back, I'd become a professional baker?
I think about that a lot. If I had, all the money and time in the world, I would do a couple things. I would go to like a baking school, whatever. I don't know what that is. Patisserie something. I only get that from British Bake Show. Patisserie, Victoria Sponge. And I would learn how to play the drums.
Did you ever play the drums?
No.
So you've never even tried?
When I was a kid, I wanted to play. I told my parents I want to play the drums. And they were like, fuck, no, we're not doing that.
Get out of here.
My uncle is a drummer. And so my mom grew up with a drum set in the house, and it was horrible. So she was like, "No, you're not getting drums." I drum in the car, and I use those monkey heads that I've had on my car rearview mirror forever. I use those as my cymbals. So like if I like, psh, I hit those, and those are. I feel like when I'm in the car and I'm drumming, I feel like I could really do it. I think if you put a drum set in front of me, I think I could sit down and do some drumming.
Just to clarify, you have 2 stuffed animal monkey heads on a string
that I've had since my first car, since I'm 15.
That hang from your
old.
rearview mirror.
Yeah.
Drumming's difficult.
I think
every limb's got to move at a different speed.
I know. I think I could do it. I really do think I could.
I think you should give it a go at some point. You should just go to the Guitar Center.
Yeah.
And you should go sit down. You could do the electric one. Or the yeah, and like you put on the headphones, and that way no one else hears, but you could practice.
Listen, this week I'll try and go. I'll be bold, and maybe fortune will favor me. I'll go to a music store, and maybe I'll set up my phone and record myself playing the drums.
I'd like to see that. There's a Guitar Center here when you come back to New York. That's an ambulance. If you can hear the siren. I can't do anything. They just, what am I going to do? They drive past. It's New York.
I just like when you always say what it is. You're like, everything stops. You're like, that's fire truck.
Well, it's there. I may as well address it.
No, I just every time.
They become...
That's a police car.
They blend in. You don't even hear them, but when I'm recording, I try to be aware of it. So, you know, if whatever. That's how I make it interesting.
That's your hobby.
Yeah.
Identifying emergency vehicles.
I can identify the different subway cars by sound as they're rolling in. That's cool. Something, I don't know if it's a hobby, but that's something that I have enjoyed. I mean, there are people who really get into trains like that, and it does become a hobby. I was in Philadelphia and coming back up to New York, but I took the regional rail in Philadelphia, which is SEPTA, which is an awful name because it makes me think of septic.
Septic, yeah.
Southeastern Pennsylvania Transit Authority, I assume is what it stands for. But there were guys on there sitting in the front car on this train, recording the announcements at each station, talking about, you know, the tracks and where the switches are, and like they were really into this, which seemed cool. Like you're interested in something, and me, I just have a little bit of knowledge about the trains, but that's something I could definitely get into. I don't know what the hobby would entail other than just learning about them. I guess if you could ride all the rails and get it, because this train was different in the way that you could see out the front. A lot of trains you can't see out the front.
I feel like that person on paper would be a hobo. You know what I mean? Like they're just riding the rails for fun.
Yeah, did the hobos ride the rails for fun? They learned the rails because they had to get places.
I guess they were getting places, but I don't know. I feel like those guys, they're kind of hobos. Minus the stick and the bindle and the beans.
I think they were just people who are highly interested in something.
Yeah.
I had a point I was trying to make before the ambulance, and I have no clue what I was talking about anymore. Yeah, distracted me at this point.
Sorry.
No, it's all right. But I asked you about the baking thing. Oh, you were talking about drumming. I was going to say you're going to be back up here in New York at some point. So there is a Guitar Center. My friend Dave used to do that in the middle of the night at there's a 24-hour Best Buy. And they had something like that. And he would just stay up all night. And then 3 a.m. go drum on the synth drums of the Best Buy. So
why does a Best Buy need to be open 24 hours?
There's no reason. I have no clue. Just one of those things. We're in New York, so we're going to do it.
Yeah.
No, with hobbies, I feel like one of the things that I encountered, though, if you get into something that you really like, space is a hobby for me. Learning about it and studying it. I'm not a professional. I couldn't hold my own in a conversation with someone who really knows their crap, but I know enough, and I find it to be interesting. But there's always, that's an example, but other things, if you get really good at it, I fear it will instill some kind of regret that it didn't do it as a career. I don't think it's never kept me from shying. It's never kept me from doing something. But there are a few things I was like, wow, I wish maybe I had done this professionally.
You know, something like astronomy, being interested in science and being an astronomer, I think, are very different things.
Oh, yeah, totally.
You know, like Travis doesn't know a lot of the things that maybe you might know, but he knows like a billion more things about very specific things. You know what I mean? So he doesn't remember, how far away, a moon is, or, the sun, or like sort of like pop science fun information about outer space.
Well, that's a good point then. With hobbies, you can focus on the elements that you actually like of the subject or of, whatever it is. Because, science especially is one of those fields where just the bureaucracy in it. And I don't know, if you can get your own funding, sure, you can do your own thing. But for the most part, you're working for people who got the funding and you're listening to them. And there's such egos involved and you're trying to prove things. And if you're working for a person who has this hypothesis and then the research starts to disprove it and then they're going to fight it. Like, no way, I've dedicated my whole life to this. This can't be wrong. It's not really something I think that I would want to.
I think that if Travis were here, he would say that doesn't happen. And maybe that's just in this particular field of science that people aren't like upset.
It's happened in the past, though.
Yeah.
I know. Eventually you'll move past the things that are incorrect, but there are people.
Because he disproved his advisor's, I think his like big thing he's always worked on.
He ruined the guy's life. Maybe the advisor, maybe he accepted it, or she. Was it a she?
He.
All right. I was hoping it was a she, just, to prove to the world that women are good at science too.
They didn't allow women.
That's a big thing. They didn't allow women, which is crazy in its own right. But that's a different topic for a different time.
They're busy at home making babies and cleaning the dishes.
They're dumb.
They can't handle it.
They can't handle space. It's too much for them to think about.
Oh, their delicate brains.
Travis sent his advisor to drunken death, a slow.
Yeah.
I just started drinking the moment
back in his office.
My pupil disproved my life's work.
Yes, the student has become the master.
It is kind of sad. That would be a tough thing. I mean, I'm not saying this situation,
well,
but
I think that he was. I mean, at first when Travis was like, I think this is what's going on and not this. I mean, it disproves a lot of what Travis had been working on his entire career, or not his career, but his entire like scholastic career, collegiate career. And so, when he first was talking about it, they were like, I don't know. I don't know if they were convinced. But then as more and more, I guess, things developed, he was able to show them like, I really don't think that's happening. So, but yes, when it comes to really getting into a hobby, turning that into a profession, it could ruin it. So keeping it as a hobby means you can put it down and pick it up whenever you want. All of the things that come with a job, don't affect you. There's no one pressing you for anything. You get to just do it and enjoy it. And only do it when you're going to enjoy it.
And it is healthy. It's healthy to stay active in any right. Even if it's exercise or whatever. If you keep active and you're not just sitting around, it's going to be better for you.
Oh, I need exercise as a hobby.
And it becomes an addiction for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. That will never be me. I will never be addicted to working out. Ever, never.
Sometimes I wonder if there's a threshold. You cross it and then it becomes a thing. Like, well, I've been doing this. When I quit smoking, I think about that. It was tough for a while until I got to this point where it's like, well, I've made it this far. And then it was a little bit of it was a passive obsession, meaning I didn't have to do anything other than not smoke. But It became this thing. It's like, well, this is what I do, and I wouldn't want to get rid of that. I haven't smoked in this long. So I feel like maybe with exercise, if you do it enough.
But that's not doing something, and this is doing something.
Yeah, no, like I said, it was a passive thing, so it is a little different. But also, we can wrap it up with this, and it's not even really anything to talk about. I was just saying that, it's healthy. I did read something leading into this that hobbies also can help prevent dementia. I don't know how they prove that. That's a strange thing because you would have to know the person was going to have dementia. Right. And then they had a hobby. But somewhere along the line, and I think that just ties into, again, if you stay active with something and engaged and interested, hopefully you won't rot away at the end of your life.
I was going to say, too, I don't think that, that indigenous people or like primitive cultures had hobbies because everything they did was about making something for a significant purpose in their lives. Like no one is no one in a like no, there are no tribes people who are like, I just make bowls because I just love it. It's like I love making bowls. You know what I mean? Like I think maybe hobbies are a pastime of the privileged.
They can certainly be.
Yeah.
And that's okay, I guess, if you're aware of that and you don't use it to present yourself as some superior being.
No,
like,
I don't mean it like that.
No, I know what you mean, but it's like a pastime of the privileged. It's like, I make bowls. I'm better than...
Yeah.
No, just you like making bowls, make the bowls. Right. And leave it at that. It doesn't need to be anything more than that.
Like my hobby is busting up this corn into dust so I can make it into a paste to feed my kids. It's just my hobby.
Fine. Don't tell me about it. Let that be your hobby. If you're an enthusiast and you want to talk to other enthusiasts about your hobby, that's one thing. But
my hobby is to cover myself in this red mud so my skin doesn't burn in this Sierra, in this hot, Sudan sun.
It's such a tough life that I have. As you said, people in the past, they were constantly doing things. Now we're at the point where a hobby could be, I sit around all day.
Yeah.
I sit around.
My hobby is TLC.
Yeah. So the person
I watch TLC. Bigfoot hunter. I hunt Bigfoot. That's my hobby.
Let me tell you all about my hobby so you know that I'm not one of those people who sits around all day. Look at my hobby. Look what I do. I'm so active. I'm so interesting.
I'm a cyclist.
Yeah, look at this. That's what it turns into in my mind when someone's talking about, nah, I knew this. Just a white noise eventually. That's how I'm gonna view the world. Everyone who's speaking is just gonna be a white noise.
It is. It really is. When we're all talking about nothing, what are we talking about? When we're just doing something because we can talk about it or take a picture of it.
Like this show. We're doing this because we can. On this episode of...
That's what this whole episode really was. But we're not doing this so that other people will see it and then it will make us look good.
Yeah,
we're making this because we believe in something and we're doing it and we feel like it's like something cool is happening.
Yeah, we're trying. And if some people like it, that makes it worth it.
We're not doing it so that we can tell our friends, like, I have a podcast.
No, I don't. I don't really tell most people that I do a podcast.
Yeah.
It's not something I share. I'm starting to share it with some people that I trust because I actually want their opinion on it.
Right.
Not because
and if we did care about the way that we were viewed for having a podcast, then the content would not be what it was. We would not be as honest. We would make sure that we're presented in a certain way.
Oh, yeah, that hygiene show would have never existed if we cared about what people thought about us.
I marked the date that I just changed my sheets on the bed, and I'm going to let everybody know I changed them this week. So mark your calendars and see how long it takes till I change these sheets.
All right, wrap it up, Autumn.
Yeah, this is, and like, this is crazy, like...
Thanks for listening to this episode. Rate and...
This episode, it was classic. Thanks for listening. Find us on iTunes.
That's the first time we put an inside joke into this show.
Rate and review us. It helps us look good on iTunes because that's what's important, I guess. Go to Podbean, follow us there. Find us on Facebook, One Topic. You can write us there. You can talk to us, whatever you want. We love you. Thank you for listening.
Classic.